right, welcome back to the Caribou Media Outdoors podcast. With me tonight is AJ from Knights of the Apex. Thanks for jumping on.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you have to excuse my voice. There's been a bit of a plague going on at my house, and everybody got sick, and I'm kind of the last one weaseling my way through it. But yeah, I've been was trying to think when I started following you. I think it was probably around when did you start YouTube? Was it
I want to say 2018.
okay?
Yeah, so it's been neglected pretty heavily the last 2 years, but we're getting ready. Yeah, I'll excuse the voice. You got to excuse my background. We're getting ready to move. So
No, that's okay.
once once that's all finalized, yeah, plans to kick that back up. But yeah, probably 2018, maybe latest 2019. And then COVID really started pumping out more stuff on there.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because I did archery as a young kid.
Mhm.
Did it in high school, but didn't actually come back to it or get interested in bow hunting until like 2015. And then it wasn't until 2019 that I bought my first bow. So that would make sense when I started to just take in as much as I could. And I remember you were doing a lot of like gear reviews and PSC bow builds and things of that nature around that time.
Yeah. But I started just making content really as like I needed some sort of passion project just because I still have a 9 to 5 in like the office world, and so I just wanted some sort of creative outlet, and I was getting
Yep.
really frustrated, like relying on a bow shop to do everything for me. So I went down the path of just working on my own stuff and trying my own stuff, and so the channel, the Instagram channel, and now the business Knights of the Apex really just spun off from just me being a frustrated bow hunter and just trying new things and getting my feedback. And quite frankly, the reason the content tapered off is it's kind of just a victim of figuring stuff out. And I kind of settled into things that I like. Started working with some companies, and so there's a lot less. Actually, there's been a lot more experimentation, and so the YouTube reviews have tapered off because I haven't had gear long enough where like I
Yeah.
feel confident to like give some sort of like I'll do an unboxing, I'll do like a showcase, like I'll talk about new stuff I'm excited about. But in terms of like review, I think people, I know like that used to influence my purchases a lot, and so that's something I take really seriously. So unless it's something I've been using for a while, which by then nobody cares to watch a video about it.
I think that word has been kind of stretched a lot. Like you're getting a lot more people who want to talk about something but are lacking the experience behind it to really give a true opinion of it. And that's what a lot of people are wanting to hear. Like, yeah, it's great. We know what the specs are. How did you use it? How did it work for you? Things like that. Because that's what I've started doing with my channel is that I'll do like an initial like a breakdown of what it's all about, and then I actually go and use it for the season. And then this is around the time where I go back to all the
Yeah.
stuff I talked about and be like, this worked, this didn't, this is why, right? Like I remember I did one about some Sitka gear that I bought, and like I went into I think I was pulling my dock out at my cottage or something, and I had waders on, but found a hole in the waders, and I got soaked and I got cold really quick. So I remembered, John Barklow's video, the rewarming drill. So I put all my Sitka stuff on, jumped in the truck and drove home. And after the 2-hour drive, I was completely dry.
Yeah.
And I share that story, and people were like, see, it's nice to hear that from someone who doesn't actually work for the company. Like it actually works, right? So it's like that kind of stuff, not just being a talking head right in front of the camera, but I
Well,
think
and I think the tricky thing too is not so much like, being, I'm still a consumer as well. I think a lot of people think that people become biased because they're getting paid. And I actually found you start becoming biased because you know the people behind the brand. So like, I'm not going to talk smack about my friends and my family on YouTube, right? Like
right.
when I know the people and their families behind the company, it's a lot harder to trash something. And so my take was always like, if especially on Instagram, like you see what I'm using every time I go out. Like I'm posting pretty consistently the same stuff. And on YouTube, I'll only make a YouTube video if it's something that I care. There's too much good gear that like you can't cover it all anyway.
Yeah.
So I think it's easier to grow a channel by like trying to dunk on a brand, but that's just not my style.
No.
But there's definitely with that, right, comes there's just some intrinsic bias in that, right? So, but you also get to a point where you start doing this sort of thing long enough where like, the company's like, I can hit up Taylor at Dialed. I can hit up, Will at Muddy or whoever it is.
Mhm.
Be like, hey, like I'm having this issue, so you guys know, like, is anybody else talking about this? What do you guys like, and thankfully the companies that I work with, they love hearing that stuff. I'm like, oh, okay, let's get on this. Like maybe we weren't hearing this, or we just started hearing trickles of that, right?
Mhm.
So that's cool. So now it's kind of flipped. So I'm a little less publicly critical, but I get to have a little bit more input on the back end, which
That's
which,
cool.
which I
Yeah.
appreciate.
For sure. Yeah, we'll get into the Dialed stuff. I like it too.
Funny, I saw it pop up on your page a lot. So love talking about that. Those guys are the best.
Oh my God, yeah. So just going back in time a little bit, when did you first pick up a bow, and how did that kinda transition into bow hunting for you?
To be honest, I don't remember the first time I picked up a bow. I know my dad and my uncle were always bow hunters. We had my family, my grandparents, uh, a small piece of property. It was an old campground in upstate New York, and so that's where I grew up on Long Island. And so we'd spend most weekends in the fall up there hunting, and then in the winter it'd be sledding and snowmobiling, and then the summer times it was ripping around on dirt bikes and things like that. So I just
Nice.
remember those early seasons, my dad and my uncle coming back with deer, and in the summertime going with them to hang stands, and it was just a very different feel and vibe, and they were definitely just all around better hunters. It felt like
Mhm.
that could be me idolizing my dad, but at the same time, like it just seemed like if they went into the woods, like something was coming back with them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So there was always this romance around bow hunting. I remember watching, the monster buck videos back when, it was Bill Jordan and Blanton and Waddell and stuff, and just like the camaraderie, and like they in between videos they'd be like walking around the Realtree properties like shooting 3D targets and stuff. And I remember my dad shooting 3D targets in our backyard, and so it was just something that was accessible, and I always wanted to do. But again, like it goes back to like I was working with hand-me-down stuff, and so like I
Mhm.
was. I think the first like legit bow that I got to shoot and kind of like make my own somewhat was one of my dad's old Hoyt X-Tex, and but like the draw length was too long, right? Like the arrows were like a hodgepodge of what we had, which was fine because I was breaking them anyway.
Yeah.
It was probably too heavy for me, and I didn't want to admit it, right? So I didn't really get into bow hunting until after college. My attention was kind of spread out to a bunch of different things, and I didn't really. I had the time looking back, but when you're in college, you never think you have enough time.
Mhm. Mhm.
Afterwards, right? Once I had like a job and a little change in my pocket, and my dad actually got me like my first legit bow afterwards, and so I threw all the accessories and stuff on there, and that's when I really got into it, and started going every fall. So that was probably 20. It was really only 2013, I guess that would be. So, but we always had that property, and so we knew that property. But I realized the last couple of years, honestly, like 2 years into KOTA, that like my skills as a bow hunter were really limited because I was just so reliant on knowing that property, or down here in Florida where I live now on my friend's property. He's a ranch that we'll go hog hunting and turkey hunting on. And so the last couple of years, it's for me, it's really been about like what's in my backyard, like what's accessible, and just trying to get and learn and take advantage of as many opportunities as I can. whether that's turkey hunting, duck hunting, bow hunting, like just kind of become a part of that's also having kids. I don't know what they're going to be into, so I want to,
Right.
I want to be able to at least lay the groundwork for them.
Be well-rounded.
Yeah, that was a long-winded answer that
That
I
was
don't.
great. Oh, that was great. Made a lot of sense. So where did the name Knights of the Apex come from?
I heard a podcast with the founder of Yeti who was talking about how the best logos and names are 4 letters because they're symmetrical and short and easy to answer. So that was like
Oh,
when I was starting when I was starting the channel and the Instagram page. I didn't want it to be me because I don't, I'm very mid as a bow hunter and overall, and especially back then I didn't know anything about photography. I was just learning everything. So I was like, let me like I want a logo, I want a name. That way, if this thing spins off into something, it's that. It's not the AJ show.
right.
I thought the whole selfie thing was pretty cringy, and a lot of guys were doing that then. So Knights of the Apex came from I grew up. I graduated from UCF, University of Central Florida, over in Orlando. So they're the Knights, and the name is kind of a combination of things. That as hunters, we have a unique position in the food chain where we're the apex predators, but we're also the protectors of all the prey that we hunt. So we're like
That's cool.
night apex. So KOTA was the acronym for that, which was easy to remember. Surprisingly, nobody had a whole bunch of those things trademarked or anything yet. So
Yeah,
just kind of felt right.
nice. And was it PSE that you first got into?
Actually, my first relationship was Sevr and Easton.
Okay.
Isaac with Arlen now was working with them, and I recognized him just from YouTube, and I was at a trade show, and we were both at the Great American Outdoor Show, and I was just walking around looking at stuff. We used to go to that show all the time, growing up in New York. That was like the big trade show we'd go to every year, and I saw him there looking super bored. It was like the last weekend of the show. That's a long show for anyone who has or hasn't been there. I think it's at least 7 days.
Oh
But
wow.
yeah, he was looking pretty wrecked by the end of it, and he was at the Sevr booth, and like I was just kind of like KOTA was maybe a year old, and like I was just trying to like learn stuff, and I kind of felt like I was striking out, and we started talking and just kind of hit it off, and he got me hooked up with whatever you want to call it, a industry discount or whatever. I think my page had like 500 Instagram followers at the time. I don't know
Yeah.
what he's be, but Sevr and Easton, like for whatever reason, really got behind me. They did a giveaway with me and all sorts of stuff that like really kind of set me
Cool.
up, and that was really helpful. And it just kind of spiraled from there. I guess that was my first contact, and then PSE was my first bow contact, and that's kind of a funny story. I think I don't know if he'll ever admit to this, but I was at a Total Archery Challenge in Utah, and I was going up to Sam Soholt. Him and I had met at a couple other events, and those first couple years, I was just going to every event I possibly could. And
Good idea. Yeah.
yeah, this industry is definitely still built on eye-to-eye contact and handshakes, and
Absolutely.
really quickly, and also time, right? Like a lot of people start stuff in this industry and very few make it more than a couple of years just because they get fatigued, life happens, things happen.
Yep.
So anyway, I was like kind of, Sam and I were kind of talking, and then one of us got distracted. Tack, especially Utah Tack, super busy, and he was talking to somebody, Caleb, who's actually with Prime now. But he was with PSE, and Sam, I don't know what their conversation was, but Sam goes, "Hey, this guy takes photos." And Caleb and I started talking, and he was working with PSE, and so he hooked me up, and I had already done, that was my first real YouTube review video. I had bought a PSE, what was that, the NXT 31, and I came out with a video January, either 19 or 20, but I was like, my local bow shop told me to get one and that I'd like it. I was just coming off of shooting Hoyts my entire life, and I did. I loved that bow. And at the time, nobody was talking about PSEs. They didn't have any deals. The Drury's had just left. And I was like, why is no one, like, that was basically the synopsis of my YouTube video was like, why is nobody talking about it? This bow's so underrated. It's very affordable. I killed a bunch of critters with that bow. And then a week later, Dudley signed with them. And so it was kind of like, I bet the market kind of hit it at a good time. And so that video took off. And that was kind of how the YouTube channel went. If I was as good at investing in the market as I was in bow brands, I'd be
you'd be all right. Yeah, right. That's awesome. Yeah, and I think I remember watching that one actually. Now that you talk about it, and now you're shooting prime.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. So yeah, I've been with Prime for the last 2 seasons. And that was again like that was a brand that I always really, really liked Prime. And so when I had a couple of friends, move and change, and they some of them kind of gave me some recommendations, and I was just super excited at that opportunity. So it's been a good move. And yeah, actually, before I did YouTube, I used to write articles as like a blog. I enjoy writing. And Prime was actually I did like a top 5 bows of whatever it was, 2018, and I think it was the Prime. I think it was before it might have been the Center G, but that was like my bow that year. So yeah, I've always been a Prime fan, and so that was an easy switch.
Yeah, when I Googled bow hunting in 2015, 2 people popped up. One was Tim Burnett, because Solo Hunter was in, I think, season 5 at that time.
Right.
And I binge watched every episode multiple times of that. And then, of course, Cameron Hanes popped up too. So I didn't have a Prime dealer around me. And the store I went to was like Hoyt, Matthews, PSE, Bowtech. I think that was it. And, I'm a sucker for marketing, as most of us are. And every year the stuff would come out and I'd be like, I want a Hoyt. And then it'd be like, next week it'd be like, I want a Matthews. And then the next week it would be, Prime's looking really good, right? So I ended up going in, I picked up both the Matthews and the Hoyt, and I'm left eye dominant. I'm right-handed, but I'm left eye dominant, so I shoot left. And nobody stocks left-handed bows.
Yeah.
So you pick up the right-handed one. Yep, feels good, right? So I got a Hoyt Helix Ultra as my first one, and I loved it. It was fantastic. And then a Prime dealer opened about an hour from my house, and as I was driving there, I knew I was buying one before I even walked in the door, right? And I did the same thing, picked up a right-handed one, and it was like the balance was unreal. And I feel like a broken record because I've said this about 100 times, but the best way to describe it for me is that it felt like you're holding a hammer upside down.
Yeah.
All the weight was in the bottom, and I was just no sight, no stabilizer, perfectly just sat in my hand. And I was like, yep, I'll take one in grizzly brown. Right. And that was it. And I loved it. I shot that for a while. And now this year I was shooting the Elites, but was it the RVX you were shooting last year?
Yep, RVX. Actually, I still have the RVX. I'm waiting on my form to come in. I wasn't too broken up because that RVX has taken the top spot as my favorite bow. I agree with everything you said. Before we had kids, and like I've had the ability to like, and not that I don't, but like when I prioritized my shooting more, and I was shooting 100 arrows at least every day, I picked up any brand and really not had a problem. But I've noticed the Prime more than any other bow I've owned. I can be lazy in my training, which I don't recommend, but I can pick that bow up after a week or 2 weeks and I can still shoot that thing.
Yeah.
It's like that Thor meme where like he gets the hammer, he's like, I'm still worthy. That's how I feel.
That's right.
I can select that RVX and then shoot it again. So yeah, I agree for sure. It's I've been a big fan of that bow, and yeah, so I'm really excited. I've gotten to shoot the form, but I don't have one in hand yet. But I've been okay with it too.
What are your yeah, I know. It seems like there's a you either like the look of it or you don't. And so you have shot one. What did you think?
I shot one. I understood everything. So first off, I didn't know what they were coming out with. They had been teasing that bow to me, but it was in development when I signed with them, and so I knew what the concept was, but I purposely like wanted to be surprised. And then of course all those leaks happened.
Oh, that drives me nuts.
Oh, and so I've been doing this long enough, and like I know the companies well enough that like I didn't like jump to anything, but I called the guys up and I was like, hey, how's it going? And they were like, as they should be, kind of pissed that like things had released the way it did,
Yeah,
since that was a prototype bow. But for me, like I know those guys, they don't do them. Whether it's the quad cams, whether it's the new carbon technology, like I knew there was a reason behind it. And when I pulled the bow back, I was like, oh, okay. It feels very different than anything else. I think, honestly, you can't sell people on aesthetics. Like you could
no,
look in the comments of like Anna De Armas or Sydney Sweeney, and someone's going to be like mid in in there. So I think you either like it or you don't. I get if you don't because objectively, like aesthetically, it's interrupted, right? Like you
right.
had RVX, which was a perfectly symmetrical bow with like these beautiful curves and immaculate finish, and in comparison, the form it's interrupted. Like you've got two carbon sections. It's so different. Um, it's just like you kind of have to process it for a minute. I was actually surprised how favorably, because it is so different, and bow hunters typically don't like different. So I was really surprised that like it's been pretty split. It seems like as far as whether you like it or not. I'll say I liked it a lot more in person, and especially in different colors. I think the tan and black that's been
Mm,
in all the marketing stuff. I get why they went that direction because it really highlights the carbon technology, but it's also a much more dramatic contrast than like the black bows or the gray bows or the green
or the
bows.
green. Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely it's grown on me a lot. But when I had it at full draw at my shop, at my local shop, I was like, this makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I was trying to tell people like either friends of mine who were kind of on the fence or even people online, like I would see comments pop up and
Yeah.
I don't know, I got a soft spot for Prime and I've talked to some of the guys over there and I jump all over those people. I'm just like, listen, the G5 has been making things out of metal
Yeah.
for generations. They don't make garbage, right? They're making like medical supplies and all they got their hands in all these other industries. They're not going to put out something that's going to be shit, right? So people
Hmm.
said, "Oh, it looks like it's going to snap." They're going to over engineer it. It's not going to break. Like
Yeah.
I think like you said, I think it was visually for people you're seeing 2 things put together that are normally separate, right? So
Hmm.
it's kind of like a, "What am I looking at?" Right? But it makes sense. Those are those are the spots where it would make sense that the carbon would be and would make the most, and everything that I've heard from people that have shot it said it's rock solid, it's super smooth, and it's a prime, like, it's not gonna it's amazing.
The The one I shot had like a hodgepodge of accessories thrown on there, and like just your basic, bee stinger and some fixed pin sight, and it held really, really well. And
Mm,
the draw sensation was so different because it makes you realize how much riser flex is in every other bow because when you pull the form back, it feels like you're just pulling the strings right off of the cams. And until you like feel that, it's kind of hard to imagine what I'm saying there, but like it's like the string is just on rails and you're pulling it right off, and you feel every sensation you feel is the string and the cams, and like you don't really feel like the build up from the limbs as much, but definitely not the riser flex. So it's really cool. It's different. I get why they did it. And, you know, Prime even said in their stuff, like they're an engineering company first, not a marketing company.
Yeah.
And they could have made that bow look more cyborg. Like they could have added material and things like that. But I think they were really hitting a target weight and performance. So yeah, I'm just really excited. I think I'm wearing out the tiles in our house, checking the front door for it every day. But
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I'm looking to try and shoot one and see what it's all about.
yeah, and
But
I'm happy that they were able to come in. You know, I know $1,600-$1,700. I know it's not like that's not an entry level bow, but for a carbon bow, I'm glad they were able to hit that price point. Because I think the other thing that it seems like some people have caught on in online, but from a production standpoint, for them to then change that bow to a 32, to a 36, to
yep.
couple of changes. Like I know part of the delay in that is they changed their entire production line, and part of that is going to be increased efficiency moving forward. So I think that's cool because it opens up the doors for them to do some really cool new stuff with that technology moving forward. And they said it's going to even make lefty bows come out sooner, which
Yeah, I like it. Yeah, I've got Brian Anderson coming on next week, so
awesome.
I'm gonna pick his brain about it. Yeah, that's wicked. Okay, were you shooting the Arxos before, like when that first came out?
Yeah, so the Arxos, so I was one of the tester, like early test and development guys for the Arxos. So like I had a very original prototype, and a lot of that feedback ended up in the proof. But yeah, I was part of like the original like handful of guys looking at the CAD designs with
Oh,
the engine.
nice.
We were on calls quite a bit, and I was really stoked with the changes they made to the proof, and it was kind of cool because like you saw your notes from 2 years ago end up in a new site, so
That's
that
awesome.
was yeah. I was so stoked on the Arxos, but also like that was the first product where like I was like very much like in the weeds, getting to have input and stuff. So like that was also my baby. But all the changes were really really good ones. So
Mhm.
yeah, but yes, I was shooting the Arxos before the proof.
Yeah, I remember seeing it when it first came out, and the first thing I saw was the bubble at the top, and I was like, "Finally." I've
Yeah.
wanted a bubble at the top forever because I always go top, down before I shoot, right? Draw back, top, down, so it makes sense. You look at your bubble, you look at your pins, away you go. So, I saw that, and then it flips to the side, I'm like, "There's a hole in it?
Yeah.
That's amazing." That's so cool. And just the angled, elevation stuff, it looks so
Mhm.
wicked. And
Yeah.
then now all the changes to the proof. I just got mine a few weeks ago. The weather's been terrible and really windy out here, so I haven't been able to sight it in yet, but it's, I'm itching to get it on the bow and start shooting it.
Well, and people forget, like I had been when they reached out to me, I knew one of the engineers. I mean, now I know the whole team, but at that time, like I knew one of the engineers really well. We had kind of like started doing stuff at the same time. And you know, people forget that when the Arxos came out, the rest of the sight industry was annoyingly stagnant. Like I remember being at ATA the year the Arxos dropped and talking to major manufacturers and be like, "Hey, when are you guys going to do a pick site?" And they're like, "Oh, we don't know if we're going to do one." Right? Or like, "Hey, are you guys going to offer
What?
new tapes or anything like that?" And like the major manufacturers quite literally did not want to do anything. They were back all of them were back ordered. Like you were talking about like 3 months for like, you know, all the brands that we know and love. And they were just really complacent and lazy. And the dialed guys really jumped on that, and they quite literally built that thing in the air, taking feedback from people, which was a bold strategy. I think it was a better product, but definitely also, you know, the Arxos, because it was developed in the air, you kind of realize like some of those last features and those last improvements that made its way into the proof, you just couldn't do with the Arxos.
Right.
Just by the nature of like manufacturing. Elon Musk talked about that on a Joe Rogan. Like anybody can have an idea for a design, but getting that into mass production is a very different animal.
Mm.
And so they, the dialed guys learned those limits with the Arxos, and then I don't think people really, well, people that know the company know that like the proof isn't an Arxos 2. It's a completely new site. Like there's other than the appearance, there's not a whole lot of commonality there. So that was really cool. But yeah, it's been cool to watch those guys grow.
Mm-hmm.
Now everybody else, you see what the other companies are doing. Like they're really like trying to compete with that, and it's nice to see that like some companies are competing now, because like I said, like it was so stagnant a couple years ago. So
Yeah, and even all the videos they're putting out, bringing
yeah,
you into the shop, walking you around the table. You see the 4 of them that work in there, right?
yeah,
It's like, and the batch drops of the different designs, like, they're hitting all the marks, right? Just so smart with their marketing. It's, like, wicked.
and they really appreciate their people. Like like somebody I knew ordered one, and they ordered the wrong thing, and so they returned it, and like one of them like hit me up like, hey, did so and so have a problem? Like they legitimately like care. Um, it's just really cool. It's cool, and like it's cool to see people's input, like from a comment into production. Like that's a really cool thing that, again, like other companies just didn't want to take feedback and implement it. So I told those guys like, hey, keep that mentality.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice connecting with your customer base that way. Um, Arrows, are you still shooting Eastons, or did you shift to something else, or
Arrows, I've shot so much different stuff. Easton still makes a phenomenal arrow. I've just had for a while there, like everybody was building their own arrows all the time, and like I was one of those guys. Like that was probably the bulk of my content, was just me building arrows for myself and buddies.
yeah.
And again, like a couple years ago, the options were pretty slim for a quality arrow, and there was zero that I could say like you could order an arrow unless like you got like a super high end custom build from like DCA or somebody. There weren't a whole lot of places that you could build to your specs, and it would come back with something that like you would actually want to shoot at distance. So so yeah, anyway, I was shooting and making a lot of content, so like I had a lot of companies sending me stuff at the time, and like I still have kind of a stockpile that I just kind of pull from.
Yeah.
I was shooting the G5 Mark arrows the last 2 seasons, which were really
Mhm.
good. Fives actually getting out of the arrow
Yeah.
game.
Mhm.
So I've got some Ultra arrows that the guys, Elite Ultra, right, like same
Yep.
parent. So they send those, and everybody's been swearing by those things. So I think I'll shoot through my G5s for tack, and then I'll probably go to the Ultras for hunting next season.
Yep.
But I've still got a batch of arrows from Dudley, and a couple of Easton 4mm, and a few other arrows laying around that
Wow.
I just kind of pull from. Some buddies actually that own a arrow company overseas had an issue with one of their distributors. So for about 3 months, I had like their entire U.S. supply in my house. So, so I was like, hey, my wife's gonna kill me, so I'm keeping this myself.
Is that is that why you're moving? Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Oh, that's good. Um, what do you think of the new 5.0s that are coming out? Yeah.
Easton's another company where they're a little slower off the line, because they don't like they've seen so many trends come and go, and they're such a big company, and their quality and their QC is so high. Like that's something that like people need to realize. Like there's a lot of companies that make great arrows these days. The reason you're seeing a lot of companies get into it is because it's frankly kind of easy to do. The quality control is what's hard to do. Like you can take an Easton Axis that was made yesterday, and I've got some Easton Axis that I have from my first season back in 2012, 2013, and those arrows are the same. That's something that like I can name a few other companies where those arrows vary depending on who you bought it from. So
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so I'm psyched that they I know those. there was nothing that like blew me away. It's stuff that like we've all been asking for a little while, but I was psyched that they're bringing that stuff to market now. Because if they're bringing it to market, it's going to be solid.
Yeah, as soon as I saw people with the experimental stickers
Yep.
on there, I was like, "What is that?" Because I've only ever shot Easton. I started with the Axis, went to the Sonics, tried to buy more Sonics. They were sold out, so I went to the 6.5.
Mm-hmm.
Then I was going to go back to the Sonics, and then saw these experimental ones, and then I thought, what is it in the lineup that they're going to do? And I thought, well, they haven't done anything to the 5 millimeter in a long time. And
Yeah.
sure enough, I'm messaging Cody from Easton. I'm like, I know you can't tell me, but I want to see what's under that sticker. He's like, you will soon enough, soon enough. And so yeah, it's pretty awesome. Looks wicked.
Yeah, I know. I still know Dylan over there is one of the engineers. All my other buddies that have left. It was nice having friends in marketing over there for a couple of years.
Oh, I
But
bet. Yeah. Just want to take a quick break to talk to you about a couple of things that I've been using that I think might benefit you. One is this Numa Outdoors gear. This is in their Kaza OV pattern, which is great whitetail pattern when you're up in a tree in the fall and late season. They also have a Kaza pattern which has more green in it, which is good for spring through to the fall. Numa has given me a code to give to you of Caribou Media 20, which will save you 20% at checkout. Another product here that I've been using for years now is the Bulldog targets. This is a Canadian made target. They're made in Manitoba. They have a lifetime warranty. I've used that warranty twice now on a couple of my larger targets that are outside. It's very simple, very easy. These targets are 2-finger removal every single time, which is incredible. Field point only target. Bulldog's been gracious enough to give me a 20% discount code to give to you at checkout. Use code BD20-Caribou-Media. That'll save you 20% on these awesome targets. Now back to the show.
But yeah, no, those arrows are phenomenal. I still recommend the Sonics to people like when they're not sure what to get.
Oh yeah.
If you're looking to build your own arrows, I think that that 6 millimeter arrow is so easy to work with. It's so easy to source components and put that together and like easily put together like a really good shooting arrow.
Yep. But I always loved how the brass or the insert would just dunk done, right? You don't have to, and not that it was a problem recessing it, but I remember the first batch I got, the guy at the store built them for me. He's like, "Don't touch these for 24 hours. They have epoxy in them." And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, okay." And then I get home and I'm like, I'm sure, it's been a while already. I mean, it's not been 24 hours and I start messing around with the unscrewing and screwing and of course I wake up in the morning and some of them are a little bit
Yeah,
out and I was like, "No." So I learned my lesson. But yeah, the 6 millimeters are so nice because you could just, you know,
yeah, building arrows is one of those things where it's the same thing with tuning bows. Like it's not complicated. It's just a lot, right?
yeah, 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 yeah.
It's a step by step process you can easily follow, but if you screw up one of those steps, you screwed up the whole thing. So,
Yeah, exactly. What about broadheads this year? Were you using some of the G5?
I was actually I went back to the old Montex,
Mm,
what I started out with, just because I've always got a bunch of different broadheads, and I kind of again broadheads are one of those things where like there's a lot of good ones now, and I kind of know my arrow setups that shoot well, like a 450 to 480 grain arrow is, or even down to like 430, 440, fly really good with me with like 150 grains up front. They just fly really, really good. So like I'll try different broadheads, and there was a couple of spots that I knew I was going to be hunting where there was going to be some leaves early season, and so all my shots were 35 and in, so I wasn't worried about like things ducking me. And so the Montex were just flying phenomenal, and I just stuck with them. And yeah, I took a bear with one, went through a leaf, and the bear. So, and it was a 10-foot track job. So, but yeah, I
can't
have
beat
some
that.
shoes. I'm hoping to. The hurricane really screwed up my season this year, but we're finally and
Mm.
something else. But I've got a bunch of things I got to get back into the woods. So I've got 3 more weeks to fill a tag here in Florida.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so usually this time of year they're kind of back to their preseason, just kind of looking for food, browsing type deal. But they're moving a little bit more than they would in early season, just because there's less food now. So hoping to get lucky. I usually get some random bucks on camera this time of year, but I'm usually burnt out by now, and this year I'm not. So
Yeah, yeah,
fingers crossed. But yeah,
yeah. Our whitetail season here in Ontario in Canada ends
yeah.
end of December.
Hmm.
So, October 1st to December 31st, and you're like, we got lots of time, and then it gets down to the wire, and you're like, oh my god.
Well, it feels like Thanksgiving happens, and then December's a blur, and then you're like, oh my god, I didn't get out. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, or I'll go tomorrow, and then you wish you had that day back, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so we're actually moving up to Connecticut in the next couple months, and so their season up there, there's no Sunday hunting, and it closes December 31st also. So I'm actually looking forward to it because my job's flexible enough where like I can get out for a morning or an afternoon, but I'm looking forward to like it's gonna force me to focus on certain dates, and also I get that out where like I can, you know, spend time with family and not have to worry about like catching up on other stuff. So
Yeah,
I'm kind of looking forward to that.
that's awesome. Are you running some marsupial stuff?
Yeah, I've been using theirs. I mean, I've always had marsupial stuff, and then I started working with them the last year or so. So yeah, they, again, just really good guys. One of my friends that was with PSC moved over there, so that's kind of how all this stuff tends to work, right? I tend to go where my friends are, just
Hmm.
because I support them. So even whether I'm working with them or spending money with them or both. So yeah, those guys have been really good, been really happy. I don't, I mostly use my bino harness either for tack or when I'm on the flat range. But I've got marsupial pouches on every piece of gear that I have, so they're good guys.
Yeah, I'm waiting for some of their Nomag stuff to come back in stock because I want to
Yeah,
pick some of that up because it looks. I've been running the Kifaru one for last year, but I want to try and get my hands on some new stuff and just see what it's all about. But
how is the Kifaru one with the flip down?
I like it. I actually love it. Like, I've got the big navigation pouch on the front.
Yeah. Okay, yeah,
So
yeah.
if you don't have that, you can tuck it all the way underneath. But even when it just flips over the front, if you have that front pocket, it's still great. It's got spot for your phone. I usually put my release in that little spot,
Yep.
and then once I'm in the tree and it's on the bow, I'll put my phone in there. But yeah, I love it. And I had issues with some of the magnetic ones where I'd be out with GPS, and
Hmm.
thank goodness I knew where I was going because the the arrow didn't know where I was going. It was pointing in all different directions. And I know people say, if you hold your arm out, farther away, you can kind of get away from that. But that's what kind of gravitated me to try the ones without magnets. But yeah,
Listen, I get it. You don't want to be messing around with that. That's
no,
that's not fun, especially
yeah.
up. Yeah,
I'm like, I know the truck is that way, but you're
yeah,
telling me to go back that way. Like that doesn't make any sense.
yeah. If you're in big woods and everything starts looking the same, that's not fun. That's yeah.
Yeah, that's how you get turned around real quick, right?
Hmm.
What's your saddle setup?
I actually just started using some Latitude gear that I got in here the last couple weeks. It's another one. Like I've got buddies all over the place. Like I've used some trophy line stuff. That's what I started with, and then I was working with Tether for a little bit, and then just got into some Latitude stuff. Um, I like all of it. There's stuff about all those companies that like, especially the ones that have been around enough where like they have like a whole ecosystem around it, right? Um, I think finding the setup or the combination is the biggest thing. Like with saddle hunting, it's all the little things, right? So the more time you spend going up and down the tree, you kind of refine that little stuff. But yeah, I'm running right now. I've got the Latitude, their profile platform. which folds up nice and small. And so I kind of like that because with their carbon sticks, the sticks just come with like a rubber bungee type deal. And so I just wrap all 4 of those things up together and just they've got like a little panel on the back of their pack. And so like once I get to the base of the tree, take my backpack off, pull that stuff off. My first stick goes on the tree. I hang the other 2 sticks on the side of me. My platform goes behind me, and then I'm just up the tree from there. So I'm always like my thought process, because I've found myself wasting a lot of money on climbing gear over the years, is safety, silence, and then speed, right? And prioritize in order. And if it doesn't do one of those 3 things, or if it doesn't jive with one of those 3 things, then it's out.
Yeah, I started saddle hunting this year, and I really liked the fact that you're constantly attached to the tree. Now, I know you are if you have like a lifeline and you go up like a ladder stand or something, but being able to have that license belt on all the way up, but then you get, set up your tether and stuff. Even though you're on like a small, really small platform, it still feels like you're not going to go anywhere, right?
Yes. I'm sorry, I'm turning my wife's alarm off on her phone. No, and what I'm always curious, like, what made you start running the saddle? What was it, that factor?
So my introduction to hunting was at a ladder stand on a family property.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a week for bear in the spring.
Yep.
I had a week for deer, and then it was see you next year.
Yeah. Okay.
And so that was how I started for a number of years.
Yeah.
And I was getting frustrated because I wasn't seeing very much when I was up there. And then I wanted to be more mobile. I wanted to branch out into more public land. We bought a cottage which had tons of public land around it. So I'm like, I need to get out here and be able to move around and be able to move from tree to tree. So I went with a lightweight XOP platform or stand, and then they came out with a saddle. So I was working with them and they sent me that, and that was it. I was sold. Like, it's fantastic. And I even I had Tom Lalonde on here last week from XOP, and I was like, I even brought out the bigger stand, and set up the saddle stuff, and I wanted to take it down and go back to I missed my smaller platform because I didn't like being flat-footed on it. I always liked being a little bit, and I missed they've got cutouts, almost like an X. The amount of time I spent with my feet on the sides in the different grooves, it's just so cool. I just
I just wrote an article for Latitude, and that was one of the things. It was like nothing stays stock, right? Like for saddle hunters, like we all tweak something, and I think that's the cool thing, because like I love that there's so many saddle companies, because it's really not a large market.
No.
Like when you talk to tree stand companies, they're like, it's a drop in the bucket, right? Compared to like the tree stand market. But there's so many options. And like you said, like those little edges, depending on like how you hunt and how you like shoot, like that's the make or break right there.
And the fact that you can get like 270 degrees around the tree. You got so many shooting lanes compared to being, in your one tree stand. So,
and I like having that tree in between. I've always like even my dad was the same way. Like he would kind of use this tree stand like a saddle, and that like he'd use the tree to block him, from like a lot of he's always standing up. So I kind of learned that way, and so that made sense to me. But I had the same story where my family property that I mentioned earlier, like it was the same thing. Like I'm up there, but it's like private property, but it might as well be public because we got our cousins up there, and
yeah.
There's always like
and all the neighbors are doing the same thing you're doing, right? So there's plenty of food for them to find.
Last year we had the neighbors' goats on the property with their bells. got loose, and so I'm like, what the hell's going on? All of a sudden 3 goats come by with the bell, and this is early season bear in New York, and I'm like, this is either great for my bear hunt or horrible for it. But yeah, sure enough, the next day only 3 of them came by, so I don't know, something happened in the other one. But no, it was the same thing where like I wanted to be more mobile, and then actually what really sealed the deal for me too was the hunting here in Florida. One, it's hot, so like the more weight I can shave, the better. But then I've been by us. I don't have a wildlife management unit or public land that I can hunt like within 2 hours of me. So I really have to. The properties I've been hunting have all been like 2-3 acre plots that I get permission on that kind of back up to sanctuaries or whatever. But most of the property owners are like, hey, like no problem, but we just want to be a considerate neighbor. Don't leave anything in the trees, anything like that. So
Yeah.
it's like, okay, well, if I'm setting up and breaking down, saddle's the only way to go. It's just so much quieter, so much more efficient. Anything I can do to limit my swamp ass is much appreciated. So, yeah, and now it's like that's my preferred method. Even if I'm not on a platform, I'm still wearing the saddle in a tree stand. So yeah, it's I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. This past whitetail season, there was a herd of cattle that got loose up near the property that I was on. And he said, yeah, there's about 60 that got out. And he said, I saw 11 of them on our property and they took off. So have a listen out there. You might hear some cows moving through. And I'm like, oh, is this a cattle hunt now too? He goes, no, I think the owner wants them back. I'm like, well, yeah, no kidding. Sure enough, I was sitting there and I actually heard them off in the distance, and we went to try and see where they were going. They were moving quick for Black Angus cows, that's for sure.
We had I don't even know if I'm allowed to tell the story, but we had but he's not going to listen to it. He doesn't listen to it. We took a buddy who just got out of the Marines out hog hunting at night, and he took a shot at something through that we all saw through the binos, and it was bouncing, and we get up to it, and it was a giant cow. Like not like a little one. It was a very, very big cow. So naturally I go right for the back straps, and my buddy's like, what are you doing? Like, well, listen, we gotta do something.
We gotta handle it now. Yeah. We're helping you out. Yeah.
We're out here like this. We gotta but, yeah.
I saw you have a couple pictures of a Montana knife company.
Yeah, for sure. I've got a whole bunch of their knives. That was another thing where like Isaac Senior introduced me to Josh back when Josh was just starting up at it was one of the earlier tax he was at, and like we didn't really get to talk. It was a madhouse there. And then I got one of their knives at an event I was at where we were helping take new hunters out. And so Josh, MKC sponsored that event. So like the guides, I was one of the guides. We got like a speed goat to take home. So I was just kind of taking pictures of that. And then I happened to be at a Black Rifle Coffee back before they went public. They had a much more discretionary budget, and I don't know whose I ended up on, but they're like, hey, we've got a content grab in 2 weeks. We need to set up a bow shop because there's going to be a whole bunch of archery based events and like hunting events and stuff. Like, can you come help us with that? And I was like, I can work remote. I don't have kids. My wife was cool. I was like, all right, sure. I ended up getting dropped off at the time they had a ranch that they rented in San Antonio that was like haunted. It's where NASA used to send the astronauts to vacation. So it's like this thing built at least the 50s, if not before.
Holy
and
cow.
all these pictures of like astronauts, and like you look in the drawers and stuff. There's no new furniture. You look in the drawers and stuff. There's like newspaper clippings from like the Cold War in the 60s. Like it's like a time capsule. This place. There's all these like different animals and exotics on the wall and stuff.
Oh wow.
I get dropped off there, and like somebody just comes every couple of days and drops me off food, and I'm just like there setting up this bow shop and
sign me up.
working remote. And it was like it was like a weirdly cold, like outside San Antonio, and like my first night there, it was super windy, and the door blows off the hinges of the front door, and like I'd already heard this place is haunted. I was like, this is it. This is how I go. Like this, I got nothing but. And then I found they had like a gun room with a safe that was open, and I found they had a Seekins MR308 and a Sig 320 and night vision goggles on a pair of Team Wendy helmet, and I was like, oh, I'm good to go now. Like they both had mags. But anyway, I was telling that story because for the content grab that I ended up staying way longer than they told me I would, but I ended up being there for the content grab, and Josh Smith was one of the guys that they flew in for it. And so like we just got to hang out for those 2 days and BS. And so I ended up doing a couple of helping them out with some photos for a couple of their earlier drops. And they're another company that like just really good people doing the right things, and just a really easy company to support. I haven't worked for them in a bit, but I'll still always support those guys.
Just an incredible story. Like I heard him on talking to Aaron Snyder not too long ago on his podcast, and just like guy's going through a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
He was living in his car, and his girlfriend at the time had 20 grand that she lent him to buy steel, and he made all these knives and gave them out to the industry people.
Yep.
To get it in their hands, to get the word out, and then right.
Well, like, and none of it was by like that's the thing. Like people, like his partner Brandon, like that wasn't his first gig. You know, like that guy had an established career in the fitness industry and a couple of other places. Like, you know, people. I've worked with brands where, especially like earlier on, where they were like, we want to do what MKC is doing, and I was like, cool. Like, what's your budget? And they tell me, I'd be like, that's not going to do it. Like, you don't understand. Like that company has Josh Smith, who is a master bladesmith, like top of the mountain apex. And then his partner is the Josh Smith of the marketing world, right? So, and that guy is putting his blood, sweat, and tears all day, every day, producing this content for, like, if you want to pay somebody to do that, that's a crazy number. Like, you know, you throw a number out there and they're like, no, we don't want to do that. Okay, well, that's like, you know, that's you either got to.
That's what it costs.
Exactly. Yeah. Like you either got to pay that amount of money or you got to put that amount of effort in. But yeah, those guys, like people don't realize. I saw Brandon posted something for the Cam Hanes drop they just did. That, like they were producing that stuff basically real time for that knife drop. Because it was a turnaround once they got the blades made. So yeah, you know, they're just a really cool company. I got to be there for their grand opening of, I don't remember now. I don't remember if it was the anniversary or the grand opening of their shop, which now they've got a new shop they're building. That was only like 2 years ago that I was there for that. So that tells you how quick. But yeah, just really, really good people, and you know, like it's. This world is small. Like there's a lot of really good people, and I've just been very, very blessed to like happen to fall into these circles. But I think some of that's just keep showing up to stuff too, and you never and try and make the most of everything, and just try and be an asset wherever you're at, even if it's just taking out garbage. You never know who that person is going to be. You know that you give a hand to. So
yeah, for sure. Like do you bounce around to different tacks, or do you tend to stay the same, consistent to the same one?
I mean, yeah, I try to bounce around just because, like, I'm a fan of the event. So, you know, I was bouncing around for a little bit. Last year I didn't get to go to one, but I've been to Utah twice. Did Montana once. Vermont was the first one I did. Which that one now is. And moving forward, that'll pretty much be my backyard tack. So I'll be there every year. But I did Seven Springs. I'm trying to think if I think that's it. But, you know, I'd like to do Tennessee one of these years. Definitely Montana's been my favorite. I heard South Dakota's incredible too. And now they're at more events. So, but yeah, I love that. I think it's so special. You know, just getting to hang out with everybody and just the people you run into. And I feel like everybody I've shot a course with, like people I didn't know, like we've still kept in touch over the years. It's been really cool.
It's amazing. Yeah, we went down. Group of us went down last year to Pennsylvania.
Yep.
It's only a 6-hour drive for us. So but 4 of us went down, and we got there on the Thursday, and I remember hearing on a podcast, if you get there early on the Thursday, go and register, because when everybody shows up Friday morning, it'll be a zoo.
Yeah.
So we go and check in, and we walk around the vendor village, and I was just like, what am I looking at? Like, this is insane. There's stuff here that we will never get our hands on up here in Canada, right? And walking around, then we round the corner, and there's Dudley talking to somebody outside of his booth, and some of the guys were just starstruck looking at him. It's like, hey guys, if we wait 2 minutes, that guy's gonna walk away, and then we can go talk to him. And it was just like, just running into people like that, or other people that you see online, and getting to talk to them. And everybody's such a great community, right? Everybody's so friendly, and we're all there for the same reason. And yeah, that was just, and we just looked at each other. We're like, we're coming back here every year. We hadn't even shot a course yet, right?
Yeah.
And then it was crazy.
I
So
now
good.
go, like, I don't even care if I get knock time, because I have just as much fun. We did, actually, no, I forgot it. We did Colorado too. I went with my wife and my son, and we had so much fun just like talking to everybody in Archery Village.
Yeah.
It was just such a good hang. I remember I left my wife for a minute. I came back. My son's covered in swag that people had given him. He was 6 months old at the time. And my wife had like bags of stuff. I'm like, what are you buying? Like, she's like, everyone is so nice. Like, I'm like, okay, now you understand why our credit card is the way that it is. So, because I have that same problem. So, but it really is just like, it's such an awesome event. The guys, Sean and everybody else that puts that event on, do such a phenomenal job, and they're just such class acts about it too. Like, I know, just some of the stuff that, behind the scenes, like they could do a lot of things that that would be good for business, but they just don't want to do it. And I really applaud them for that, because the event has stayed true, and like it's an awesome event every year.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this year. Definitely be at Vermont. I'd like to do Seven Springs. We'll see if I can get over there, but hopefully we'll link up if I do.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And how does it, I've got 2 kids, but they're much older now. They have bows over here that I have to adjust for them, because they keep growing. One's 18 and one's 15. So I have to adjust the draw length a little bit. But how did it feel getting your son out there shooting with you? I saw you had posted some pictures there. It looked awesome.
Yeah. And man, it's awesome. Like, it's it's, I mean, like, it's so challenging for reasons like you don't expect, being a dad. And as a dad, like, I feel like there's this constant internal, or maybe it's external too, but this struggle of like, I have my ambitions and my passions, but like none of that trumps being a dad. But like at the same time, like I feel like if I'm just always being a dad and I'm not pursuing these other things, I'm not being the example that I know I need to be for him, right? And so like you're being pulled in all at the same time. Like, I have a 9 to 5, like I got obligations through KOTA, so you're being pulled all over the place. So now, like that, he's like, he's only 2, but like, I got him these little books, and like, if I'm gearing up, like he's always right there with me, and he's like, Daddy fishy, or Daddy turkey, or like every time. My favorite thing is getting into my tree, and I'm going through my bag to get something, and like I find one of his toys that he like stashed in there, or like a random piece of my gear that he threw in there. And so yeah, it was fun. We went out. He's got like a little rubber band bow with like the little foam arrows and stuff, and
That's awesome.
I don't want to push. I have two sons, and I don't want to push them into anything. But I just want to find a way to enjoy the stuff they enjoy. But I feel like it's just kind of a natural thing in our DNA. Like, hunting in general is definitely one of those transformative experiences that like is just in us at our core. And definitely, I think if your dad does it, it's really hard to not get into it at least a little bit. So yeah, so we'll see. But yeah, I love it. That's so cool that your son's, I look forward to having a tune up their bows for him.
Yeah, it's great. Yeah, I can remember, a few years ago, I remember I was looking at my at Instagram, and my daughter came over. It's funny how they can humble you sometimes. And I think I had like I don't know, I was at like 550 subscribers or something. And she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. I'm just trying to think about different ways I can get myself out there. And she looked at the number and she's like, that's like everybody in my school sitting down in the gym watching your videos. And then she walked away and I was like, wow, that's cool. I didn't actually think about it that way, you know? And then, yeah, it's funny how they have a way of getting you to look at things differently. It's awesome.
Definitely. And I mean, I had that revelation, like it was actually watching a couple of like big name guys at a tack event and their kids were there and, you know, everyone around them was kissing their ass. And, you know, these guys are millionaires, like, you know, not in the archery industry. These guys are in other industries and things like that. But their kids, they're just dad to them, you know, and their kids want their time and they just want to be held and they just want to go play games. And it's like, that for me was like, like once you, my wife and I had this revelation a long time ago, but it was like, once you have enough to like save a little bit and you can go out to dinner and not stress about it, like
Yeah.
the money and everything else doesn't really make you any happier after that. So it's like, okay, so
No.
once my first son came, it was like, what am I doing KOTA for? And it's like, it's like, I really just want to open up opportunities for us to do cool stuff together. And if he's into some of this stuff, like, and I can help like fund us having fun together through it, you know, that's
Perfect.
really what fly fishing, bow hunting, turkey hunting, duck, whatever it is. Like, I just want to know enough about it that like, he's not embarrassed by his dad. And, and worst case scenario, I can take really cool photos of him looking cool. So something to the table.
Yeah. Always make sure you have enough money to order pizza and just have fun with everything else.
Okay, that's good. That's good advice.
Yeah, right. Do you have time to share like your hunting story with your bear?
Yeah,
or something else?
Sure. Yeah, it was definitely. I mean, that was kind of my big hunt this year. It was, you know, it was on a property in upstate New York, and you know, New York, New Jersey, loaded with black bear. We're in the Catskills, so we're not too far from the Jersey PA borders, and that whole area really loaded with black bear. You know, we usually take one or two off of our property. It's a little over 100 acres every year. You know, it's not like a very productive property, especially for whitetails. It's kind of like an awkward layout where like it kind of V's, so like your access is limited and you got public on really two sides and then farms that are heavily hunted on the other. So, but what we have going for us is we've got a ridge top with old logging roads and a ton of oak. And then that north end and that south end is really a lot of rocky, cliffy stuff with a lot of caves and stuff. So bears love walking those old logging roads on those ridge tops and just vacuuming up those acorns. So we had a lot of really good bears on camera passing through there. So I went up for October 1st, which was after early season bear, but that's when deer opened up too. So I kind of set up, again, using the saddle. You know, my dad had a fixed stand up there, but his stands were kind of like, he had one on the deer trail that ran parallel to the ridge, or he had one on the bear trail. And you know, the way I was shooting, I felt confident I could split that difference, and with the thermals, play both of them. So, you know, the day before, I went with my son, and we set up, we set up my saddle, so we pre-hung that. And then the next morning, I took, rather than taking the logging roads in, I cut across the deer trails to try and work my way up to that ridge from behind it, knowing that there might be stuff already on that ridge, because the cameras they had deer and bear all times of day. So I was like, I can't do anything about blowing out the deer, but if there's a bear rummaging around or asleep up there, maybe I can sneak up on him. And sure enough, when I got up there, my first climbing stick, I had a double aider on there, and it was cocked to the side, and you could see the teeth marks in the rubber on my aider. And I was like, all right, well, that's a good sign. So I righted that thing and got in there. And, you know, when you know there's a lot of bear in the woods, like, first off, when there's not bear in the woods, you feel like you hear bears. But when you know there's bear in the woods, like, it's still, you can't see anything. It still messes with you.
Oh, 100%.
So every noise, you're just like, is that a bear? Is that a bear? Is that? So
they're so light on their feet.
so light on their feet, and they really like they don't really care. Like they're not gonna mess with you, but like they'll hang even if they know you're around. They'll hang around for a little bit before they take off. You know, they're especially the bigger ones. So yeah, I saw so this bear. I saw it on the opposite side of the ridge. It looked like a couple of bears walking, and there was a so I was like, okay, good sign. That was like pitch black, and then this big bear came just kind of coming down the logging road, like read the script, made a right hand turn on this deer trail where one of the trails kind of like cuts across over the top of the ridge. And so it was broadside at 30 yards. My pin, the way I shoot, I've got my dial set up where I'm still shooting the double pin, and I just leave my top pin at 30, and I just kind of know my holds. I started hunting that way just because most of my shots are 40 yards and in anyway. And
Yep.
with deer during the rut, like when they're chasing and they're going under you and all around, like I don't know, my brain just wasn't computing with having multiple pins. Like I just found I was much quicker on the draw and much more effective with that single pin. So anyway, she stopped broadside 30 yards. There's some brushes covering the vitals. I knew I had the fixed blade on there, so I felt confident. And they weren't thick, right? Like it was a couple of really light leaves. Sent it, went, like she turned around, bit the opposite shoulder, so I knew it was a pass through. And she took off, but I couldn't see the way the shadows were, and it was so dark over there. There were a whole bunch of pines and stuff over there. I couldn't see. I didn't see her go down or hear her go down, because when she roared and took off, I didn't know there was actually another bear that, like not too far away, that was like moving around. So that kind of got my attention. So anyway, that bear that she ended up like startling ended up coming. I got a video of it. Ended up walking like right under me. So this place was just saturated with them. But it was a little round fat sow that walked underneath me, and so they was just kind of hanging around. She had a cub with her, which was really cool because a bunch of does came by, and the cub was just looking at them, and the cub like tried charging at the does. It was pretty cute. So anyway, I ended up being in the saddle for like another hour, and then I was like, I can't really tell like where that bear, like if it went down or not. But I felt confident in the shot. Went down. Hour was right there, covered in blood, and I look, and sure enough, there's just a highway of blood, and she's 10 feet away, laying down right there, and it ended up being a big sow. Which I didn't want to take a sow, but it was like first light. I didn't know how many opportunities, and I could tell it was a big bear. And there's enough bears up there. I don't feel too bad about it. But
Yep.
but yeah, I know there's a couple of giant boars that we had on camera that are still walking around, but that's all right. So they'll be
Yeah.
there.
It's awesome. Yeah, I have a soft spot for bears because the first animal I ever shot was a bear,
Okay.
and I never found him.
Uh,
So it's like, I go hunting for them every year, and I still have the arrow in my garage.
mhm.
He came out, and it was almost like it shouldn't have happened because I just got this new tree stand. We set it up, and then I was in there within the first hour of being in this new stand. I heard some splashing in the river, and I thought it was a beaver that we knew was in there. And then out walks this bear, and he's heading towards a barrel that we had set up, and kind of stops and stands up on his hind legs and puts his nose in the air. And I'm like, oh, he knows that I'm here, right? And he does a complete spin and drops down and starts walking back the way he came. And I knew I had a window. As soon as he got in front of this one tree, he was going to be gone. So I shot. And again, I always tell people, practice from elevated position if you're going to be in a tree stand. This is my first time shooting from a tree stand. I hit him a little high, and he took off running, ran past the tree, snapped the arrow, so there's no blood whatsoever. And they don't really bleed that much anyway with all the fat, right? So it was 28 inches from the throat of the nock to the end of the carbon, and there was 11 inches of the arrow on the ground. So there's a good chunk of it still in him. He took off running. So I was like, that whole experience, and it was like, I don't know, 18 yards. Like it was close, and
Yeah.
seeing his movement and just being that present and switched on, that it did it for me, right? So I get down, I can find the arrow, the lighted nock's blown up and there's hair and a little bit of blood on it, and then I kind of crouch down and you could see tunnels where there was a bunch of like older bushes and the bears had made these tunnels. And I was like, I am not going in there until I go back to the camp and let everybody know what just happened, right?
Yeah.
So go back, we come back, we search for it. It's getting dark. We come back in the morning and do this whole grid, and we never found it. So the first animal I ever put an arrow into, I never found. So that
Oh,
sticks with you forever. But
that makes you better though.
yeah, definitely. Because for the longest time after that, every time I draw back, I had, some people have like a cadence they say to themselves. And for a while, I was saying, be better than the bear, right? Like focus
Mhm.
on where your pin's going. But you do this long enough and you'll run into situations like that. So,
Well, and people, I'm so envious that you guys can set up the can like the feeder up there, because New York you can't. And I had a similar story. I was lucky enough we ended up finding it. It was a 3-hour search.
yeah.
But same thing. It was I hit him high. You don't realize. Well, first off, it's hard to gauge the anatomy of a black bear, especially when in the shadow. Like it's just so hard. Like they're just a ball.
Mhm. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and you don't like most people don't realize like how low their spines actually go. And so I got lucky. I was using a Sevr mechanical, and my arrow got lodged in the spine, so he was dragging his back legs down the mountain, which I felt terrible about. He didn't go very far, but it was hard to find him. He did the same thing where he went through some thick stuff. And luckily, he stopped just before the thick stuff and took a dump. And so we saw that, and that's what led us through the thick stuff. And we found him in a river. It was actually like for like a first bear, he was in like this beautiful river. It was really cool, but yeah, it is a tricky thing. Like I'm a big proponent of like you should be able to bait, because the bears they're so hard to judge and get a good shot on
Oh,
when
yeah.
moving through.
Doesn't
Uh,
necessarily make it easier.
no, it doesn't. And other than like people say stuff
And
about.
people say that, but yeah.
I've hunted, I mean, even for whitetail, like I've hunted Kansas, Ohio, like other places where they had feeders, and the mature bucks will come and look, but like I haven't seen one hit a feeder. Like they know the game, at least not in daylight, I should say. Now I'm sure
Mhm.
they other places, but not spots that seems like where they're getting regularly hunted, and it doesn't guarantee they're going to be there when you're there. So,
Right? That's the other game we play. Yeah.
yeah, I think like I'm a big like I think I'm a big fan of it. I don't really buy a lot of the reasons that you hear for not being allowed to do it. But especially when you're just starting out, like I think if you can get on like a hog hunt or a bear hunt or something where like you've got a little time to watch the animal and how they move. I think that's what screws up most bow hunters. I know for me, that was, all of my bad shots were because it was a shot I wasn't expecting to take, and then I was rushing it, and I was out of my thought process, and I was just too green and naive to like anticipate, and then like so you make a miscalculation, you screw up the shot, and then that's a
Yeah.
wounded animal. Even just like if I'm in a new spot, if I even see a deer and I get to watch how they're moving, my confidence just goes through the roof for the rest of that hunt. Like just seeing like how they interact with the how switched on are they, how are they interacting, what paths are they taking, like you can scouting only tells you so much.
Yeah.
um even with the cameras, like it's still not everything. So it's man, I'm sorry that happened, but like I'm sure you carry that with you, and like probably makes you so much more lethal in the long run.
Mhm. Yeah, and, I had another run-in with, was on my brother and sister-in-law's property, and they have a 75-acre wheat field, but they're turning it back into a wetland like it used to be. But
Oh,
they've
cool.
got one section where it's like a highway. All the animals come through here, this one area. So we set up cameras. I put a blind in there, and um, you know, as some of us do, I got lost in my phone for a minute, and I was commenting on something Aaron Snyder had posted, and I look up, and now there's 4 bears in front of me, 16 yards in front of me. And there was a big one, and there was a couple laying down, and then I heard one's like it was pressing its nose against the blind I was in. I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. How did this go? I've been up here for 3 days. The first 2 days I saw nothing. Now I look down for a minute and I look up and there's 4, and one of them's about to come through the side, right? So I end up shooting one, and then again, you got caught up in the moment, and I rushed a little bit, and I shot the smaller one that I didn't want to, and I got mad at myself. And then you kind of think, why am I doing this? This is not what I'm out here to do. I wanted to take my time and get a better size and do better for the the animal population. And you just kind of get down on yourself for a bit. But again, it's all a learning process, and you got to remind yourself, stay off your phone.
And all the little I've gotten I don't consider myself like a killer, but I've been around and gotten to share camps with some like really impressive hunters, and it's the things they do right are just a million little things, just lessons learned. Like it's not like big things that like they do that you're like, oh, I would have never thought about. It's literally just thousands of little tiny decisions and nuances that they've just picked up and learned from like doing all these. But yeah, the phone, it's so hard to disconnect. Like I catch myself all the time. It's just so hard to sometimes like, but then like, yeah, like you said, like you got to remember like, okay, I only get this time so much. Let me soak this all in and just be present in this. But yeah, I've gotten caught looking at the phone before too. I had a big bust. There's a big deer that he definitely had gotten hit by a car or something like that. But yeah, I look up. I was in Ohio, and all of a sudden, it was the first afternoon. I think it was like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, November like 1st or 2nd, and like all of a sudden I look up and he's just right there at 20 yards, and I'm like, oh no.
And he's already looking at you.
Yeah. I'm like, okay, you're probably getting a pass right now.
That's right. Away you go. We'll see you next time.
Good game. You won this one.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on here. And we're over an hour here. I don't want to keep you too much longer. But let everybody know how they can find you.
Yeah, so Knights the Apex on Instagram and YouTube. That's Knights with a K. And yep, that's Instagram's probably where I'm most active. But yeah, we'll be kicking up the YouTube stuff more readily soon. I've been saying that for a while now, but I keep getting it. Yeah,
it's a hard thing to keep moving. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, what you like, so it's hard to find stuff that you want to talk about. But yeah, this move will be a new area that like I haven't been. So and also we got the guys on our family's property up in New York. Like we're all a little older and more knowledgeable now, and we've been doing a good job of like really holding out for mature deer. So now we've got a number of like mature deer on the property. So like the next thing that we're going to do over the next couple of years is habitat improvement projects.
Oh, nice.
Which is a lot more limited, like what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do in New York, but that'll kind of be some of the fun. So, hopefully it works, but either way, we'll try and make some stuff and share some lessons learned from it.
Yeah, people eat that up. That'll be great content too, for sure. All right, well, hopefully we'll see you on a TAC, hopefully, and we'll definitely have you on again.
Definitely.
Thanks a lot.